All right, thank you. Our break is over, and we're back, and we're going through a couple of items that come under finance and, I guess, HR also. We'll start with the pension plans. Would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Stefan Chakurta from Hooker & Holcomb Incorporated. We are the actuaries for your pension plans.
Pages 266, and with supporting occupation on page 296 in the books.
So I prepared a presentation that I gave to the retirement board last week. I always look at this as being your meeting to make sure you get the information that you need out of the meeting. If there's any questions, feel free. I don't know how much detail I need to go in with you guys. We can go through the presentation page by page, or if there's specific topics you want to cover, we can do that as well.
I'll leave that up to the board. Gentlemen, what's your discretion?
Can we go over individually the lines on page 266?
You're going to have to help me because I don't have what you're looking at in front of me.
Okay, so OPEB health retirees going up 2.28%. Yeah.
So from actual 17, you're looking at fiscal year 17 and fiscal year 18, or the budget?
Budget.
For fiscal year 19?
Fiscal year 20 is where we're at.
We're at 20. So you're saying it's going up from 18 to 16.4 million to 17.5?
Correct.
So we are working on, I
Well,
believe,
one quick comment.
19 to 20. It's the budget 19 and the budget 20.
The numbers in the budget book are divided into two pieces, WPCAs in one piece and the towns in the other piece. So, but the relativity is the same.
Yep.
So Stefan, if you maybe just, don't focus on, the numbers are the numbers. I think Mr. Timiak's question is, why is the change approximately? What's made up? What's the difference between this year and last year? Why did it not go up so much? Blah, blah, blah. Excuse that. I didn't mean that part.
That's pretty much.
so specifically, I don't know, I'd have to look at the different contracts. So each time there's a new contract, there tends to be different benefits negotiated. So we always look at what's actually negotiated, what the town has promised to pay the retirees and medical coverage when they are no longer an employee of the town. So those are the other post-employment benefits other than pension. So that's what that we're looking at here. Why they go up, premiums tend to be the biggest driver, those who elect coverage. So just on the town side, the ones that tend to be more expensive would be the police and fire, because those are the ones that tend to retire before 65. Anybody who has a benefit before 65, the medical coverage is a lot more. I'm not sure if that specifically answers. I don't have enough detail to know what you looked at last year or 2 years ago compared to what this budget is saying. Because I would have thought, I don't know if that was on the budget based on the 16 valuation. We are currently working on the 2018 valuation, OPEB. So I would have thought that would have been for the 19-20 year, 21-22. But I could be wrong. I don't have that report in front of me.
Right. What's in there is from the 16 valuation. Okay. Yeah. And
so that we
will have the final numbers towards the end of this month, and which will we then be able to update those when we report to the Board of Finance at the end of the month. So
typically what tends to change, as I said, premiums, the type of coverage, so whatever the benefits that are promised for when they retire and what they're going to get. And it could be the number of bodies that went from the prior cycle to the most current cycle that you're looking at these budgeted numbers. So were there more people that are eligible for the benefits? Did the population increase? I don't know that from one valve to the next in front of me. I don't have that, but that tends to be a driver.
Bob, on page 266, what's the line? What's the line number which you'd get updated information by the end of the number? Is it retirement contributions of 2.4?
The pension numbers on page 266 are based upon the July 1. The pension numbers on page 266 are based upon the July 1, 2018 valuations. So those are current and up to date. The OPEB numbers that are in this book are based upon the July 1, 2016 OPEB. We only do OPEB every other year, and then the latest valuation will be completed this month, so we'll have the updated numbers. But these numbers are the same numbers we've been looking at.
Do we just do OPEB because it's lower exposure? Every 2 years?
Yeah, it's
Not mandated.
It's not
You're-
mandated.
Yeah, you have to do it with every.
not mandated. It's
at a minimum
not-
every 30
GASB doesn't
months.
require that you do it.
Towns used to do it every 3 years, but when GASB came out and changed the rules, they made it that you could only do it every 30 months. So now everybody does it every 2 years.
And Ed, to your point, in the pension plan, we have about $350 million. In OPEB, we have $50 million, so there's a different level of exposure.
Yes, because you have just started pre-funding the OPEB benefits. So you're probably about maybe 10% funded, if even that high.
Chris, I think you're talking about the number, it's going to be the health. Aon.
So specifically is what I'm determining is the level of questions I have to ask right now, because
Okay.
there's going to be updated information at the end of the month, which is going to change any question I move towards to get a more accurate number in
These
this.
numbers don't change,
Well,
though,
that's,
do they?
but that's all, we're voting next week, so we'll be done by then. The
Right.
Board of Finance will have the
Right.
ability to adjust.
So essentially, there's really, I can't think of any questions I would ask right now to determine whether this number is right or wrong. Because we're-
well,
the
the
new
number-
number-
Hopefully, it's right.
Yeah, no, right. Do you understand what I'm saying?
There's the number.
Accurate information will be coming out in 3 weeks.
And that will
No,
go
no,
to
We would have already
that would
voted
go
by
to the
now.
Board of Finance.
Yeah, we would have already voted by now.
Last year, we would have voted, we would have had that information for our vote. This year, we don't.
Right.
It's left to the Board of Finance.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
There are also, too,
There's
there-
no assumption changes. There's no,
Right.
there's been no changes made to any of the assumptions. So the only thing that's going to drive the number different than what it is the healthcare trend and the, because healthcare, that's basically the healthcare trend, and the number of bodies.
He's not 100% correct on the assumption changes.
Yeah.
So there's two ones that will be changing. Typically is the inflation assumption. It was probably at 2.75. Inflation's lower, it's 2.6. We'll be using that. That gets reflected in our long-term trend. So it'll go, everything will go down 15 basis points in that regards. The other big assumption that we changed or update is the mortality table, because there was a new improvement scale that
about
was
that,
released
right.
every year that's been
Yeah,
getting
but
done.
is that industry-wide?
Yes. And, well, you've already taken the stance to use those tables, so we would continue to adopt them. And that table will actually save you about 0.5 to 1%.
So when these
Liability.
changes, something like the mortality in your business, do you offer, who's in charge of this? JRIB, Retirement Investment Board?
They're in charge of the
Who
investment.
tells him adopt this?
The pension board.
Okay, so in your business, do you offer the pension board a menu of, here's where we are? This is acceptable. This is where the trend is going. This you don't want to do because it costs you more money. This is the way to go.
So there's a whole bunch of, you got a whole bunch of points you're making there. So when we set assumptions, we're kind of dictated by our standards of practice, actual standards of practice, how we can come up with those. Then we come up with ones that are acceptable in today's day and age. Mortality is a big one. We oftentimes have to deal with the auditors. So if we can come up with an assumption with the retirement board, and the auditors may balk at it.
But there are mortality tables.
Yes.
And we're using the latest published table.
Right,
Correct.
my point is, what they're using, I want to make sure that all we see is the end product. We're not involved in how you guys make the product. My concern is that, several years ago when we were dealing with discount rate, we were at a set level. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, discount levels were going down, but it was never making it to this level where we would sit here and say, well, wait a second. All of a sudden, now I have to take this huge hit. I want to make sure that whatever assumptions the pension board and you're recommending
Yes.
are accurate and that they properly reflect what's going on with our workforce.
So to your point on the discount rate, yes, that was lowered in 16 when we did an experience. Now, if we're just talking pension side or OPEB, or a little bit of both. So on the pension side, there was an experience study that looked at all the assumptions based on plan experience. And those were updated at that point in time for the 16 valuation, which would be reflected here as well. So typically, most assumptions on the OPEB side will follow with the pension side unless they're specific to medical plans only, which would be like the healthcare trend. So inflation tends to be the same. The discount rate is not necessarily the same because you could have a different asset mix. So you kind of look at what those funds are expected to earn. And that's how we kind of develop that. On the OPEB side, so you have one plan that's not funded that we won't talk about. If the plan is not funded, we use the 20-year municipal bond rates, which are much lower. So, which is one of the benefits of why you pre-fund a plan, because then you get to use a higher rate based on how you're playing. If you're making your actual determined employer contribution each year, if you're funding it that way, then you can tend to use a higher rate because you're expected to have benefits or the money to pay out the benefits as they come due.
So you changed two this year. You changed the inflation and a mortality table.
Yes, yes,
All right, inflation went from 275 to 260?
yes.
Why is that?
Because we look at the inflation rates that the Social Security Index puts out. They use a 75-year study every year that gets updated. And like if you talk to an investment company, they only look at 10 to 20 years out. Social Security Index looks out at the OESDI report that they put out every year. That looks out over 70 years. That to me is a more accurate looking at what the market's going to do, how they expect things to be in the future. So that's why we kind of use that one.
What about mortality?
Mortality is when we adopted the new tables when they first came out in 14. And I don't know if that's. I think you guys probably adopted them in 16. So each year the Society of Actuaries puts out. They've been doing an adjustment to how you project mortality improvement each year. So they look at more and more data each time.
People are living longer.
Yep. So also to point out, there is a new mortality study that's being done, and it's in its proposed state that's going to look at more specifically to the public sector. So where there'll be a specific table for teachers, as well as police and fire and all other town type employees.
How do we take into consideration, I remember years ago when we used to do this stuff, we were figuring, we were giving out 3% raises. It seems like basically every bargaining unit somewhere around 2. How does that incorporate it into this?
So you look at that. So if they're whatever's in the contract, so they tend to be like 3 years period or whatever that is. The one thing that doesn't take into account that people often forget about is step increases. So when we would have done our experience study, we would have looked at actual pay increases as opposed to not just that 2% for all sake and purposes, but it may have been something different. It may have been, that patrolman may have become a lieutenant, may have become a sergeant.
He's the guy I want talking in front of the RTM when we approve labor contracts. He's got all the answers.
I don't have them all. But so we always have to look at that. So when we would have done our experience study, we would have looked at everybody and how their pay increased over the 5-year period. Typically we use a 5-year period to look at and to see how they've gone from one year to the next.
So
And
there's no magic formula there. You actually run everything out.
I'm not sure what that means. Magic formula.
I mean, there's no set percentage like 2% salary increase. You actually look at each bargaining.
We look at that group. So we have different table for police and fire as well as general town employees.
Do you build this up person by person?
That's what I'm getting at.
Not person, but we look at each person, but we don't not specifically Joe Smith, who's this person. We'll look at him, but we'll look at everybody, but we'll also look at their age as well. So you kind of look at two things. We don't do, sometimes you do some.
But you're using actuals wherever you can as opposed to.
Yes, we're using
generic
actual pay.
trends.
So if we look at the people that were in that plan for those 5 years, we'll look at how his pay changed each year and what age he was at. Determine. So then you can take a block of everybody that was 46, what did they average as a pay increase from one year to the next? That's how we came up with our salary scale.
Okay.
Because that will catch, a 25-year-old may get only the 2%, but someone else may get that step increase when they get a promotion. So that kind of accounts for that. That's why you can't just say everybody's going to get 2%, because that's not really what you're paying.
Any further questions from the board?
I just want to go big picture, Mike. I remember we always follow this conversation because this is a big one.
Yep.
And year over year, I mean, I remember sitting in these rooms last year just expecting there was going to be a couple $1 million increase this year. And when it's flat, that's when my fur goes up. That means did we change something? Why are we flat?
Okay.
Don't give me the science, just give me big picture. Is it
Big
assets?
picture, so now if we look at, because the page 266, that has multiple things in it. If I was just concentrating on the two lines, 10 and 11, which are your police and your, I assume the retiree contributions is the town side, isn't that right? So if I look at those would change based on experience, plan experience. So some of the things that we talk about, salary increases, they were down for both so that you have some gains. That will help drive the that cost. Inflation, because your cost of living increases are based on CPI and things like that.
Which went down.
Which went down, so that would be a gain as well. Then you look at your other assumptions, your demographics. The biggest one that changes, or that has the most impact, is mortality. One plan had favorable mortality experience, which means more people died than expected. The other plan, more people lived than expected. So one plan had losses, the other plan had gains.
The other thing is the one plan is closed. When a plan is closed.
Well, that would be taken into account when they do the projection.
Right.
So when we close that plan on the town side, are you saying we're starting to see the turn? I remember when we...
It'll be another year or so.
When we first did this, it was just like we were going to ramp up, and then we were going to reach, a lull, and then eventually we start to go, are we starting to get to that bend now?
I think you're about a year out from the bend. When you're, I think
You know what I'm talking about?
You're saying the costs go up, then it's going to start to go down
Yes.
and level off. I think about one more year of, 1 to 2 years of increase, and it starts going the other way. But again, now, when we do our projections, that's based on all assumptions being realized as expected.
Well, that's assets performing and all that.
Yeah, so on the pension side, we smooth assets for funding.
Yep.
So when we look at that, and that's in my presentation, but what happened, you had 2 years of losses, and then the last 2 years of gains. So you kind of smooth that out. And in the market...
Is that amortization period?
No, that's different. That's a 5-year smoothing of assets. So we smooth gains and losses over 5 years.
All right.
So because now after 2 years, that first loss, that big loss that was realized, that'll drop off, and going forward, we're projecting just to be realized. So then you have those 2 years, most recent years of gains. So that'll start to drop the contribution. But like I said, it'll be another year before that happens. Of course, that in reality won't happen because we'll have another year of gains or losses on the market side.
Any further questions?
Why did we add a person? Do you have this report?
Pension report? Is that what you're looking at?
Page 16.
You're looking at the reconciliation for which plan? Well, we'd say the police or fire the town.
And I think we voted on someone being bought back in.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be it, but I just want to check this one.
Yeah, the new entrant on the town side.
Yeah.
That would have been someone that could have got bought back in, or a data correction for some reason they should have been included, they were not.
Is that the one we did in executive session that time?
Probably.
I don't know without knowing the specific person.
Yep. That's the only one I can think of, and I didn't think of that until you said that.
Yeah, but that's the only reason I could see
Only
this.
one I can
Absolutely,
think of.
yes.
Okay.
Certainly, that's an active person. You can get the new beneficiaries.
So do you is it proper to say that these numbers year over year now will start decreasing? Are we there? Say yes.
I could say yes. Yes.
That's what we've had.
And my projection kind of
Only if
shows
that yes is accurate.
But again, the market is what will be a big driver, as well as experience. So if everybody continues to live, which obviously you want that to happen one side of things, if they continue to live, you'll have a loss every year.
Yeah, but let's also say in the next few years, the pension board is also going to do an experience study again. They, in fact, then lower the discount rate, the mortality tables go out, a few other things go down. That may mitigate
Yes.
the downward curve you're looking for, right? Those things, if they lower the discount rate from 7 to 6.7, 6.8, 6.5, something, that's going to increase the liability, that's going to increase the annual payments.
And we do a study of where everybody is at with the discount rate, and I think over all the connected municipalities, it's about 6.92%, so you're just a little higher than that. You have some outliers that are still up like at 7.5, but.
Yeah, I get it. I don't want you to take my comment off base that I want it to be cheaper. I want
Should be fair.
what
Should
the
be-
actual reflection is of what's going on. And we only see this presentation once a year. I imagine you're in front of our pension board all the time. when you present, well,
But now, that's what.
when you,
But our pension board managers are showing us these numbers every month in terms
right,
of
what I
we're
want to see is I want to make sure that the choices from the menu or whatever it is an accurate reflection. I don't want it to be budget-driven when it comes
It
to
is
this
absolutely
stuff.
not. It is absolutely
mean,
not. The only time.
When it comes to you guys and your science and the way you do it, oftentimes the number's the number, no matter how much we hate it.
The biggest,
And I would point out, just for the record, that the pension board is not tied back to our annual budget at all. That's not one of their considerations. And that's why nobody, actually, Bob and I sit on the pension board, but other than two of us, the vast majority, which is 9 folks in total, 9 or 11 in total, are not tied on any other board, so they're making their votes and judgments totally independent of the budget.
Which is what I wanted to.
and what, to your point, that's why so many municipalities in the state are in the financial crisis that they are, because they were budget
Well, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
You are not, typically, the only assumption that really has the biggest impact or the most movement tends to be the discount rate.
Right.
And that's one that we go to the board and have to argue with them where they want it to be. You know, a lot of towns will say, we can't take that step right now. You know, if it's truly, say, a 6 3/4 rate that you need to get to, some towns will go in steps to get there. But again, we'll look at how you're currently invested and what those expected returns are expected to be over the long term. And that's how we kind of come up with, here's where we say it should be, where we think the rate should be. And then they vote on that. And they're really right on where they're supposed to be.
All right, and that's the process, just to be clear, that we went through last time. So the rate we set was what we expected to see as a return. If you go back and look over, is it 84 months, we've hit that return. Certainly past experience is no guarantee of future performance.
Yeah, we look
as
at, and I don't know
everything
if that
says, but
is in here. That'll
certainly,
be in that report.
certainly we're as a pension board, as a group, and we've got some very experienced people on that, they're picking numbers that they're comfortable with in terms of their targets, and because that's how they measure their performance. Any other questions?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Seeing none, thank you very
You say
much.
health insurance, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll do the retiree medical
one of
plan,
the-
but we don't come up with the insurance rates.
Yep.
The-
No,
the,
thank you very much for making the trip today.
Yeah, thank
The
you.
experience study that was referenced, that's the annual, that's every 5 years.
Yeah, didn't we just do one like 2 years ago?
Years ago.
So I
Yeah.
assume it will do another look at.
Yeah, that was the big one.
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was when they developed the matrix, right?
right.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I'm going
You again.
to,
Yep, not a problem.
the Aon people are upstairs, I'm going to go fetch them.
Okay. Linda, where's Aon in the
We'll
book?
be taking a 2-minute break while we're waiting for Aon folks to come join us. All right, thank you. Our break is over. We're back here, and we have some folks from Aon to join us and talk to us a little bit about our health insurance experience.
Yeah, Carlton will be here momentarily.
Okay, very good. All right, Linda, you gave us 2 pages on that. One was 80, and what was the other page? All right.
How you doing, Carl?
Thank you for joining us today. If you just step up to the mic and introduce yourself, as much as we know you, not everybody watching on TV is familiar.
Carlton Lindgren, Aon Consultant and Consulting.
Thank you. What's the board's pleasure? What would we like to hear?
Okay. So we start the budget process with claims data through November. We use a rolling 12, latest 12 months of paid claims to project forward for fiscal 19-20. So we started off, I think it was a 3% increase with data through November. We updated it with data through December. That was +1. And now through January, it's -1.
If you could just explain to us what that means, please.
So that means you're self-insured, right? So you pay the claims as they materialize, and you pay an administrative cost. But we also develop what's called working rates that represent the full cost of the plan. So the rates with data through January are going down by 1% from 2008, from 18-19.
So if we look at the sheet that we were just given from Finance, these general fund numbers, do these represent an increase to the general fund or a decrease? Okay, but, so that's what they mean by favorable is
The sheet that Linda just passed out is the sheet that's in the budget book?
No, this is updated through January.
The top part is in the budget book. Oh, yeah, it's got January there, okay, yes. So January, so December's in the budget book. The second set of numbers there, January, is what went out with the package that went out Friday. So there's a deduction, so there's a net change. If you go down to the very bottom, there's a favorable change to the budget of $386,000 in the general fund and $17,000 between the latest information, the January information, and what's in the Orange Book.
or simply, this is $386,000 on, that we can either reduce the budget on the town side, or that can be used to cover any other unexpected surprises that come in as negative.
Correct.
So is this, I remember we had a good year, maybe in 16, we had a good year in medical, but nothing like this. I mean, I'll take the good news. Is it, the explanation as simple as our workforce stayed healthy, everything, nothing happened?
Yeah, in a nutshell, yes. Large claimant activity generally plays a pretty good-sized role in,
In our deductibles, everything stayed the same there?
yeah.
But
Yeah,
also,
not any significant plan changes, yeah.
all right, if I
Well,
remember
there's
this
one-
correctly,
One thing, with the union contract negotiations,
Yeah.
the employee share of the cost has gone up, thereby reducing the employer share,
Right, but that,
at least 1%.
right, so that's the net number.
yeah.
Yeah.
Net.
But the numbers I'm presenting to you are gross number.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So this, you look back 12 months?
we look back 12 months.
So part of this positive experience is you're comparing the month you're dropping off to the month you're adding on.
Right. Because it's rolling 12, so when you add a month, you drop off the prior month.
Right.
So
That's
if you
just
go back
trying to-
and look at that.
Just trying to point that out. Sometimes it could be, not so much this month was great, but 12 months ago we had a really bad month.
And you trend, and as you add months, you take months of trend away. So you don't have to project out as far because you actually know the data as it rolls in.
Are you seeing this in a lot of your clients?
I would say the past renewals over the past 12 months have actually been pretty good, yeah. Not up to trend, if you will. Medical trend is about 6%, 6 to 7% annually.
Yeah, I
So you
thought
would
last year
expect
we
to
were in the
see-
high sevens, right? Is that what we were talking about last year? 7, 9?
So, but I'm going to defer. Last year, what was
I
our,
mean, just trend or?
Yeah, the medical trend, I remember high sevens.
Yeah, the trend.
the trend hasn't changed. The
But
question is, what's our
I think
performance? I don't
last
think
year
we're up there.
increase was only like maybe, yeah, it's in the 4 to 5% range.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, we've been running below trend.
4 and change, I think it was
Yeah.
last year.
You know, we have put in some new, not new plans, but there's Anthem has put in some programs that may be helping this. I don't know. No.
Yeah.
We-
It's
we
marketing.
can't-
Yeah, their prescription drug programs, the online doctors, all this stuff. Now, whether our employees are taking advantage of it, yeah,
We have a meeting
let's not
scheduled.
budget for that.
We have a meeting scheduled in May where we're going to bring in Blue Cross and ESI, your prescription vendor, and we're going to go through utilization patterns. So that'll help us to determine why the claims are down. Maybe there's fewer inpatient hospital stays and those kind of things, but you don't glean that data just from the paid claims that they give you on a monthly basis. You have to dig a little deeper.
And just to be clear, we're not budgeting based on the marketing and the promises. We're budgeting based on the actuals. that
Yeah,
come
no,
through.
do we have the employee contributions in the budget book, or is that netted out? You gonna see? Do you see any changes in the marketplace for next year?
In terms of,
Better Anthem negotiating better deals with doctors.
well, I mean, what would you say? It's more of the bus driver, I'm the financial guy.
Well, broad trends in the marketplace involve kind of, you see a lot of consolidation of provider groups and hospitals buying provider groups, that kind of thing. Those generally, at least in the recent term, have lead to cost increases. The hospital, as these provider groups get bigger and have more leverage in their negotiations with the insurance companies, they tout them as providing more efficient care, and they should. But largely, it's also been giving them more leverage in their negotiations with insurance companies, and has typically driven costs up over the recent term. But not a significant impact to trend. I mean, we still see trends in the 6 to 7% range, and that's what we've been using kind of broadly across our clients. So, no dramatic shifts, but those are the kinds of things that we're seeing kind of broadly across the market.
If Medicare for All were adopted, what would that do to our budget number?
That is largely remains an extremely difficult question to answer. I mean, what's it going to look like? And it could go several different ways. Medicare for All is going to. It's very difficult to comment on that at this point.
Would you guys be here commenting? Because it would just be simple, right? It would eliminate you, right?
It would eliminate. Yeah, it would eliminate. It would eliminate the town providing health care to employees, and would come with substantial taxes on somewhere, right?
What the real cost is.
Oh, yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I know. That's not for you guys to figure out.
Well, yeah, it would be bad for us. Yeah.
And would we have to negotiate that into all of our union contracts, get them agreed to that, to leave Anthem?
Well, again, I mean, I think if the federal government passed, universal Medicare, well, universal health care and Medicare for all are two different
Right,
things.
yeah. No, I'm talking about the
One.
proposal on the United States Congress House floor right now.
Yeah, but no, I don't think so, but I don't know. I mean, I think if it's a federal law, you got to go with it. But contracts will all be up in a year anyway. So.
Yeah, I think if the feds passed it, right, you have to adopt. Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Hibson? But if you're gonna respond, you need to come up to the mic. If you could wait till you get to the mic to start talking, that would be helpful.
On any passage of federal law, it depends on the language of the act. So if the act supersedes or takes control of and trumps the field, then that would control. If it leaves it as a floor and lets people negotiate or go above and doesn't trump the field, then the contracts would probably still control until you negotiate otherwise. So like the Interstate Commerce Clause, the feds have said we control this. States don't get any input into how that controls interstate commerce. On other acts, they say, okay, here's the floor, and states can do what they want. So it all depends on what the specific language of the act is as to whether it trumps the field or just levels the field and allows people to go above it.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board?
No, not a question, just more, I'll take any good news, and this is good news. I just want, Mike, I know we're pretty much caught up on collective bargaining agreements, but I just don't, this is still a volatile cost, even though we're having a great year. It's going to always be a volatile cost, and when it comes time to negotiate with employees, I think that we just keep seeking givebacks and more of a partnership with our employees when it comes to healthcare.
One, Mr. Bateson, I think we've gotten to where we are by having some very good working relationships with our bargaining units, with our unions, and they've understood the economic pressures on the town and the economy and worked with us cooperatively to do that. I think the other point you're making is insurance costs, because we're self-insured, there's no magic, there's no buffer. We're paying for the actual experience.
Yeah.
So to the extent, it's one of our least controllable costs, right? Because it's going to be what it's going to be, and then we have to end up paying for it at some point. So I think your point is well taken there, but it's very definitely a variable cost.
Is there any chance we get a February run on this before we vote a week from Wednesday? I mean, yeah, a February run. Oh.
What's the date a week from Wednesday?
March 13th.
We won't have February data by March 13th.
Okay.
We usually get it around somewhere between the 15th and 18th of the month. But I could do it as soon as I get it, but it won't be by the 13th.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for making the trek down here on this snowy day. All right, any further questions from the board on any department?
Yes,
Yeah, I got some stuff for Bob,
All right,
finance.
I do.
But let's do HR first then.
Good afternoon, Emmett Hibson, Director of Human Resources.
Emmett, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Yourself?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. It's been
Been a long day?
no, delayed start, we're good.
Your budget had a 8% increase for insurance claims.
Chris, where are you? What page?
You know, I'm looking for it, Ed. I wrote it down as something.
83. 83 and 84 are the numbers. And the 8% is on 84 top line.
Can you talk to that, Emmett? Let us know what that's incorporating right now.
Sure, so you're talking the insurance and claims, the 7.94%, is that the number we're looking at?
Yes.
All right, so as you notice, we have broken into several buckets, property insurance,
At the bottom of page 83. That's where that is broken out.
So you have, and I'll walk through them individually, you have property insurance, you have E&O, errors and omission, interscholastic, liability insurance, and then risk management. All right, so for a total in that grouping of about $2.4 million. So the first thing that sticks out is the risk management fund, and that's $700,000 is the first numbers. There's a $100,000 increase on, proposed increase on that, and that's, $700,000. Number. That's a number that we estimate based off of lawsuits that we have pending,
Okay.
right? So we go through and evaluate every year what we think we're going to spend on our claims. We take a review of our claims. We analyze what we think we're going to spend between our deductibles, legal fees, and then any settlements that are out there. So based off of what we had for claims pending, based off of a meeting between my office, the lawyers that are involved in the case, and the town's corporation counsel, $700,000 was determined to be what we think we would expend in fiscal year 20 for those claims. So that takes care of the first $100,000, or $100,000 of it. The property insurance goes down, but that's a little misleading. So what happened is our insurance coverage is through a number of sources, KERMA being the vast majority of it. our KERMA rates, we had a 3-year lock on our KERMA rates that expired last year. We have a 5% increase on all of KERMA for this year, but a 3-year lock moving forward, right? So our property insurance actually goes up for the KERMA portion of that, but what we've done is we've split out some of the costs associated with the property insurance to the fire training academy. So it looks like that went down, but there should be another $24,000. So that's about a 3% increase overall on property insurance when you compare apples to apples. The errors and omission went down 3.59%. Again, KERMA is part of that, but we had some decreases in our fees. Our brokerage risk management fee went down there. And then our liability is where you see probably the bulk of it from a non-scholastic part, and that is about a 10% increase. This covers a few things that went up. Our cyber risk is increasing yearly, quite frankly. Our flood is increasing. Our excess actually went down, and our broker fee went down, but most of this you're looking at is the 5% for KERMA, and then the cyber risk insurance going up. And then
What's the total on the cyber risk insurance?
cyber risk going across is $50,000.
That's a set.
That's a premium-based, yeah, we have a set rate that KERMA goes out and procures. It's not through KERMA. KERMA doesn't offer it, but they go out and they get a quote for us through, I forget who the vendor is for that insurance.
You're familiar with
Yeah.
Sorry, I just assumed KERMA was. And then one of our largest increases in this 25% is the interscholastic sports insurance. Even though it looks like it's a 25% increase, it's actually flat from last year. What happened was when we went out to quote back in February, we got one quote. So what you're seeing now are quotes. We don't actually bind our coverage until June. And when we went to write it, everybody pretty much got out of the business of writing school sports insurance. So it jumped up significantly to $52,000 last year. But you didn't see it in last year's, well, you saw it in last year's budget, but you didn't see it in the actual, what was presented. So it's flat this year, but they're showing the heavy increase because of the increase in premiums last year. Mostly, from what I'm being told, has to do with concussions and athletics, high school athletics, concussion protocols and costs involved with that. So I expect if that's correct, that number will trend upward some more.
Thank you. Mr. Bateson?
Quick question. Emmett, let's say we total a police car. What line does that come out of?
We total a police car, that actually comes out of a line that finance keeps separate and apart from me. That's not part of my risk
Not risk management?
That is not risk management. No. If there is a lawsuit involved with the totaling of it, then that comes through there. So if there's a lawsuit involved, I handle it. If it is a property damage, I don't manage that through my budget.
Do we have any idea where that comes out of?
I think it comes out of Emmett's, I mean, it's in property insurance, it's insured. And
No, our police cars are not insured.
Yeah, I thought we were self-insured on
We
police
do not
cars.
insure our police cruisers.
Yeah.
We're self-insured because
then it just comes out of the operations budget.
that's the problem we have with the
Can we go
flood.
back and check our police chief, former police chief was in a car accident a few years ago? Can we go back and look at what happened with that car and how car was replaced?
Like we had some cars that were flooded,
Had 5 cars.
right?
So-
Yeah, it comes out of operating budget.
Comes out of, so
was
here's
all-
the,
I thought there was,
Yeah, I think
it was a deductible.
Ed's,
that
I believe Ed's question is which line in the operating budget does it come out of?
Capital,
In the police department?
yes.
I would expect it to be a reserve account.
No, we don't have any, like,
Okay.
sinking fund accounts or anything like that.
yeah, we don't make, we debated about putting insurance, just so you know, we debated about whether to get insurance on that or not. However, to get, we're self-insured to the first $100,000. So you need to lose 5 cars at one time to make it worth us insuring the vehicles individually. We do insure our fire apparatus, which is a line item, but we don't insure our police cruisers. That's the problem. Our property line is a $100,000 deductible, so like we don't insure fire ladders. We had one of those break last year. You know, they're not cheap, but they're not worth insuring.
And specifically with respect to the lady that hit McNamara, we subrogated against her insurance claim. We were recovered on that.
Okay, good. Any other questions from the board?
Heart and hypertension. We have active cases on that right now? Do we have?
We do have active cases. It's actually, the number they put in for this year is 500,000. They do an estimate. So I went and did a 5-year review from ours, from a budget perspective and a claims, and we're trending down. We were at, in 2015-16, we were at 725,000. We're now at 500,000. 1 year, it got knocked down to 500,000, and we were at 640,000. That was like 2 years ago. So last year, we brought the budget back up to $600,000. We actually, I think it ended up being approved at 575. This year, we're back down to 500. Quite frankly, one claim can generally, you know, blow your budget if you have a death. Typically, what you see in these claims is you see some, you know, small rating, and you see a lot of drug expenditures. So your first rating, second rating hit is what you're seeing in these costs generally.
You're not from PMA, but if you can just comment on their decrease. I didn't want to invite them here to talk about a decrease. They're such good guys.
So
Having a
their
decrease.
contract is expiring, and I've gone out to quote between them and Kerma for our workers' comp,
Okay.
to be quite honest with you. So we are.
Are you budgeting for that?
We don't, not this fiscal year, because it doesn't end until next January. So we don't,
So why is there a decrease in workers' comp then?
because they gave me a better rate. They gave me a reduced
Well, no,
handling.
that's claims experience. He's not talking about, he's talking about the claims experience. Which,
Oh, I think my
yeah,
claims,
the claims experience goes from,
2079 to 1789.
yeah. Yeah, it's basically the workers' comp, if you may remember, it's part of the Internal Service Fund. If you remember, the Internal Service Fund had a significant deficit, and over the years, we've been building up that deficit to credit, and part of that building up has been by reserving more than we need. We didn't jump up all at once, so we've been strengthening the reserves through the expense line item every year, and so this is a combination of two things. One, we have fully reserved that account now, and two, we had good experience.
Okay. So this is more administrative thing than a PMA thing.
Well, this is PMA and Emmett work the claims.
Right.
But the
Fund is on our
fund-
side.
Right, right.
So is that you're comfortable with that number?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Hibson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emmett.
Have a good afternoon.
All right, then I believe we're back to finance. Any questions from the board?
I do have some.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for enduring the long day with us today.
Always fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Page 94, the contingency line.
Yeah, the contingency line is,
A very large drop, almost $1 million.
the contingency line holds two major components, normal contingency and labor contract contingency. All the labor contracts, with the exception of ECC, are settled, retro payments have been paid, and so So the only, as of June 30, 2019, there'll be one contract open, and that's the ECC. That's the $28,000 that's in there. The normal contingency that's in there, it's what, 300,000?
It's 328, so the other 300,000 would go,
It's a normal contingency, like for snow removal or whatever.
well, we didn't have that in 16, 17, and 18.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Well, it's a combination.
No, we've had that number.
Oh, yeah, it gets transferred out at the end of every year.
Oh, so there's no actuals, I gotcha.
Right,
Okay.
because the contingency, the normal contingency you don't use gets transferred out to fund balance, sends it to zero, and the labor contract contingency goes into the salary reserve.
Okay, so,
So there's only 1 year of salary reserve in the contingency account. The rest of it is in the accrued salary account.
okay, so 300,000 is for snow emergencies and whatever comes out in 28.
My bonus.
Yeah. I don't think that's us, right?
Baseline for contingency.
that's why it goes to zero.
100, right?
Yeah.
It was 400 for a couple of years, but
We did.
300 seems to be the new baseline.
Okay.
What happened is it kept getting cut, so we stopped fighting that fight.
All right, the following page, contribution to surplus.
Yes.
So there's a couple things going on there. The Board of Finance has a policy. Now, you got to remember that as a Board of Finance policy. It's not really a charter policy. It's not something that that's, you're not violating any laws if you don't.
It's not an
adhere to
accounting
that
policy.
Pardon?
It's not any gap or kind of.
Right, it's not a gap or anything like that. So, but they have a policy to try to get to work to get the fund balance percentage up to 11%, and they also have a policy, do no harm. Now, last year, so what's in this what's in here is for 2020 fiscal years is basically two components. The budget, I think, goes up like $8 million. What's the total? 12 million. $12 million? Yeah, maybe it's 12 million in total. Okay, so the budget increase of $12 million to maintain a 10% ratio would be an increase.
For the fund balance, we have to add 10% of that increase into the fund
10%
balance.
increase would require an increase of 1.2 million. There's a second component. For fiscal year 18, the town realized a surplus of $3,765,000. That surplus increased the fund balance from something like 10.32 to 10.83. Excuse me, take that back, 9.52 to 10.87. So we got that jump up to 10.87. So now you have to increase the budget of that item by a combination of 10.87 of the budget increase and the additional amount for the on this contribution to surplus that you generated the prior year.
So adding those two together, this year's contribution to surplus is like,
1.7, I think.
what about the $3 million?
That got added to the unassigned surplus, so you have to get another 10% for that, or 10.87% for that. In other words, by having a positive variance, you increase
Kind of another version of no good deed goes unpunished.
All right, so as you can see, the unassigned fund balance for fiscal year 19 is, for fiscal year 18, was $32,142,000. So we budgeted $689,000 increase for 19. So that's 689, which would put us at 304. But then what happened, we ended up with an actual, well, it's not on here, actual. So by only, I'm having trouble.
We can't allow.
Right, and this is the 19. This is I'm trying to do the 20. So what's going to happen is the increase in fund balance I'm trying to figure out how to say this really clearly. We end up 19, if we exactly realize our budget, we end up 19 with a 10.75% fund balance amount. However, in 18, because of the increase in fund balance, the positive variance, we had a 10.877. We were not aware that we were going to have that positive variance when we budgeted for fiscal year 19. So going into fiscal year 20, we can't just budget it at 10.75% of the increase. We have to budget it at 10.878% of the increase to keep it at the, we have to budget it at 1.740 is the amount that gets it to gets it back up to the 10.87% increase.
But we added $3-something million.
Correct.
Why are you saying get it back up? I don't understand how we get it back up. Because we're adding to it, so it's already up. So it's higher. The fund balance increased by $3 million, which we didn't budget it for.
And raised our percentage.
But it raised the percentage. It raised the fund balance percent as a percent of expenditure. So since it raised the fund balance percentage, let's use some exaggerated numbers. Let's say the fund balance was exactly at 10%. Okay? And let's say that in the prior year you had a $1 million fund balance, you had a $10 million budget. So let's say then in that year you doubled your fund balance. So you ended up going up to, your fund balance doubled, you ended up at 2 million instead of 1 million. And let's say your budget stayed the same. Let's say there's absolutely no increase in the budget. So you're still at a 10 million budget amount, but now what you did by having that positive variance the prior year, you increased the fund balance percentage to that expense item from 10% to 20%. So now that you're at 20%, you'd have to budget 20% to do no harm, as opposed to the 10% you were the prior year. So when you have a positive variance, you get an additive requirement to fund balance amount to do no harm.
So by generating a favorable variance in operations, we're essentially killing ourselves here because now we have to add more money.
Correct.
So we're being penalized for performing well.
Yes.
If you follow the policy, yes.
Okay.
That's where, when we had lower balances, the idea of doing no harm made perfect sense. You always put together a budget that's going to basically plan to increase your fund balance or to maintain it.
Okay. So now I see.
As you keep exceeding that, then you keep making it a higher and higher target. So it's the do no harm that gets, so if you look at what's happened to our fund balance, we've gone from $12 million, we've tripled it in 10 years, from $12 million to $34 million.
So you're considering when we were at 10.877%, favorable outcome, surplus, that brought us essentially down on a percentage basis.
Correct.
The policy construes that as you've done harm. Even though you've generated a $3.7 million surplus, you've harmed your percentage.
Correct.
Okay.
So we've tripled our fund balance in 10 years. What happens when we get to 11%?
We haven't tripled our fund balance, well, pretty close.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was government math.
Yes, okay.
What happens when we get to 11%?
Well, the discussion at the Board of Finance was that they were going to reconvene the fund balance committee and discuss increasing the target. There's a
To what?
that wasn't stated. I think I sent out in the package on Friday, we sent out a list of the fund balance percentages for all the Fairfield towns,
I thought it was all AAA.
all AAA towns. Is that what we did?
Almost the same thing.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. And we're still at the lower end of that.
The challenge we've had in the ongoing discussion is that, frankly, once you get to a point where we are, you've got the financial flexibility you need to handle any short-term blips. The rating agencies do not give you any lower bond premiums than what we get. We've got the best premium prices in the market when we go out to the market for where we are. We can put more money on the shelf. The rating agencies might penalize us if we ever use it, but we don't get any points for putting more on the shelf. So the question becomes, how much more do you want to put on a shelf? Or the other way to phrase it, how much more do you want to overtax the residents so you can put money on a shelf and have a high fund balance that you can't use? Whereas we could be using this money to supplement the budget and do other things. You'll see other towns do that. Virtually every other town except Fairfield, and I'm talking AAA towns here, will use part of their budget to lower the tax increase, will use part of their fund balance.
And
to
then
lower the tax
replenish it the next year? How does that work?
well, one, they're up enough so if they didn't replenish it, it wouldn't put them in bad shape. They don't use, they might use a couple $1 million out of this, right? So they wouldn't dramatically change their fund balance percentage. We've been AAA since fiscal 12. AAA with all positive outlooks. We had a negative outlook for a year. That changed in fiscal 12. So from when we had 4.95 and a 5% ratio, we've been AAA with all three credit agencies since then. So we haven't gotten any benefit of putting an additional $20 million into our fund balance, other than the fact we feel good about it.
Now, the one other comment I'd make is, we just did the quarterly report to the Board of Finance, and we're looking at another positive variance. What I could do for you on Monday is take those projections and show you what it would look like at the end of what the actual will look like.
Yeah, you're talking 2019 positive?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because this number is going to go up again, I think. I know.
So would it go up above 11%?
I think that would be a yes, but I'll put together a schedule.
Where do we fit in on this? I mean, I understand it's a finance policy, but, you know, I'm starting to get a little uneasy with these levels.
It's something that certain members of the Board of Finance have pushed for. I'm going to suggest that Tom Flynn and I had a conversation back when we were both on the Board of Finance together, and I'm going to say back in 08, 09, in that range.
There was a need for it.
And we talked about, do we ever want to get to 10%? Do we want to get to like 8% or 9% and kind of stop there? Because there's no benefit to getting to 10%, 11%, or 12%. Now, there are some towns out there that are 15% to 20%. But you look at that and say, okay, but what benefit are their taxpayers getting by putting that much money on the shelf?
I think I'm just staring at a 1.75 million number, knowing that we put 3.3 million in last year. So the total between the two is like $5 million going on the shelf.
Well, I think you want to wait till Monday to see what the added addition to that is. I mean,
Yeah, I know we're not supposed to look at this outside the percentage ratio, but if I look at what's going on in these AAA municipalities, you know, Linda gave it to us in our packet.
Yeah. In packets like.
Dollar-wise, we're comparable. I mean, we have, we're at 32 million. New Canaan, 25 million. And, you know, I mean, we're there. It's just on a percentage, pegging it to our general fund, our general expenditures, I don't know. I guess when you sit down and think about it, what kind of catastrophe, what are we anticipating? But then you're telling me I can't even use the money.
we've already had Storm Sandy, and we have, for most of the catastrophes we have enough cash flow that we can spend some initial money, but we can also go out and bond the balance. So it's not going to necessarily have to come out of our savings with no ability to bond. Practically speaking, yeah, that the rating agencies don't like to see you using that, but virtually every other AAA town puts some of that in their budget. And see, what happens is if what that does is let them finish. If we use $2 million of this, let's go back to a year ago where we know we finished $3 million to the good. If we use $2 million of our surplus that year, we would have in the budget to lower our tax increase. We would have still finished $3 million to the good, put that $2 million back, and increased our fund balance by $1 million. Mr. Mayor, did I get that right?
Yes.
So I look at it this way. Instead of bonding for a new Smith-Richardson golf clubhouse, we had 3.3 million in surplus last year. We have 1.75 going in this year. We could have just paid cash for it. We don't have to pay the bond premium for the next 20 years. And that won't affect that doesn't affect our ongoing operating budget. That doesn't create a hole for next year's.
No, and potentially if we don't put it into surplus, then we don't get penalized by the rating agencies for taking it out.
I understood this years ago. I mean, I remember, you remember Ken Flato, you were on the board of finance when we were that one year we were in the threes, and everyone went nuts, you know, like, oh my God, we're going to get downgraded. I understood the program at the time and was fully supportive of it. Now, I'm getting a little nervous. You know, last year, 600,000. Okay. You know, this year, 1.7.
Well, and the issue is,
I mean, and here we are. I mean, you know, I'm ecstatic that my health insurance just gave me a $450,000 gift. Meanwhile, I'm putting 1.7 away for the bean counters. You know, I just, there comes a point where it's just like, number one, I don't think the taxpayers understand what we're doing. If they did, I'm sure I think they'd be a little unhappy that we're taking money just to prove that, you know, we know how to take money and hold it. I just don't see why we're doing it. It's getting to a level where I'm starting to get uncomfortable. Couldn't we do, what could you do with that 1.7? A lot.
a lot. At the very least, you could lower the tax increase.
Exactly. Either that or everything else that we're worrying about, you know? The maintenance that we just heard from the BOE.
Yep.
$1.5 million, they can't do. Well, guess what? I'm putting it on the shelf for nothing. So I think we're getting to the point where it's like we need to sit back and say, do we want to keep doing this? I'm certainly getting nervous to go higher. I mean, 15% of 317 million, that's a lot. I mean, how much higher do we want to go? I don't know. I just see that there are better uses out there. I'd rather see that money going into our buildings or something, if that's what we decide to do. Or give it back to us.
I think you're raising some very good points, but those are those are the questions that we get to take a look at on Monday.
Bob, what's your marching orders on this? You're going to roll forward the surplus based
I'm
upon
going to roll forward the surplus to
2019, based upon what you saw at the second quarter?
2019, based upon our projections for this fiscal year, and then I'll do a further calculation as what would be required for next year, based upon like a 2, or well, based upon some budget increase. Start to say 2%, but those days are,
Okay.
but that's town, not Board of Ed.
All right, any further comments or discussion?
Yeah, I want to go to, we're done with fund?
We're done with,
Okay.
if you want to be done with it, we're done with it. If
Okay.
not, we're not.
Debt service. I can't recall this debt service, page 269. I got those two numbers again. The debt service, use of debt service fund reserves, what is that stuff? I forget. Did we have this discussion last year?
Sounds like we're going to have it again either way.
Yeah, I can't, I saw it and I was just like, I remember it, but I can't remember what we talked about.
The,
The bottom, 1.4 million.
the, when we had, the town parked some of its surpluses in prior years in debt service to have it available to decrease future tax increases.
That's something that's done typically in September by a vote of the Board of Finance, if I remember.
Correct. So
That's one of the uses that they're authorized to do with any excess, any surplus, they can say, we're going to put it here. You guys can use it to manage the mill rate.
correct.
Okay. So this,
So this did not go into the fund balance.
yeah, I know, this is the transfer that the Board of, all right, this is how they manage the surplus.
So this is put into a balance sheet reserve account.
Yeah, and what did we do this year? A couple months ago in October, we took a number two.
We put 600,000 in for paving and 800,000 into the internal service fund.
And the internal service fund was dedicated, could be used towards this number. No?
No.
Something else?
That's, the internal service fund's been used
That
at
was
that.
to, that was the final action, if you will, that created that internal service fund to be positive instead of.
Do we have anything
deficit.
left in this debt service fund reserve after we use this 1.4?
No.
Okay. Can you look back and just, I want to make sure that this was done right. Can we just make sure that, show me where the Board of Finance transferred that, wherever they did? Because I'm assuming there's only two numbers. We used one last year and one this year. And now if you're saying it's at zero, whatever last year's were in this, I should see some number that was authorized by the Board of Finance to, this is what,
You'll see, we can show you the numbers in and the numbers out.
that'll work. That's what I'm looking for. And just a general question to, when I read your presentation, I'm going to say in the newspaper, and it explained the budget and how you got to where you got. You said use of reserves. Have we discussed all the use of reserves that have been used to, I'll say, manage the mill rate? Is there anything else that we don't know about?
There's the prior year taxes that we talked about earlier today, sir.
Yep.
There's the use of the debt service reserve.
This one?
And then there was, when we closed out, then we also used the accrued, 400,000 of accrued salary reserves that was excess. That's the.
Was that
400,000.
contracts money that we didn't use?
Yes.
I don't want to say that we left money on the table, but that was what was left over from contingency.
Yeah, we
All
did.
those numbers we were booking.
We generally have this in executive session.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
We settled,
Yeah, and.
on contracts.
Yeah, it's not only that, it's also, we book reserves on June 30th. There's
Is this a salary holdover?
the salary holdover
Yeah.
reserve sometimes, and so that accumulated over time. As a
How much was that
result-
number,
reserve.
400 you said?
That's 400,000. That's the 1 million and the 400,000.
So those are all the use of reserves that,
They're in the budget, yes.
okay.
Any further questions?
No.
No, I think there was, we wanted to talk about healthcare contributions by, was it department heads?
Oh, we're going to do
Yeah.
department head salary.
Yeah, that's what it was, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got to do that. I don't know where it is. Yeah,
Should be in the packet.
yeah, it is. Document 8.
Was there anything else on our list, Ed?
I don't think so. There's a lot of information floating around here, though.
Yep. Where they're numbered.
Mine says 8.
Should be 8.
4A. Document 8.
Guys asked for a lot of paper, so we delivered.
Thanks for printing it on small paper with really small numbers.
Next time, can I get mine in placemat format?
Yeah. Laminated.
We don't have that skill set.
Now, this is, I'm assuming now that we're doing this, these are the numbers going into the budgets. This is our department head salary review.
These numbers are already included in the book.
Yep. So it looks like generally everyone's from 2.5 to 3%.
Roughly, nobody's higher than 3%.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, one of the actions you guys need to do is to vote on the first selectman and the selectman salaries.
Yeah, we're getting there.
I'm just reminding you.
And that's all we do. We don't do town clerk. That's Board of Finance, right?
Correct. That's Board of Finance in the charter.
Okay. I'm not having a problem with any of the proposed increases. I'm going to go back to health insurance contribution. I know you guys don't like hearing it, but, you know, we're at 18%. We've been level at 18% for several years, 17, 18, 19, and we're proposing to stay level at 18%.
Benefits were cut.
What?
Benefits were cut last year.
On DHs because of mid-management? PETA contract?
Yes.
How was PETA's?
I'm sorry?
We follow, I'm sorry, do we
Yes.
follow PETA mid-manage, I'm sorry, department heads, did they mimic PETA? How were they cut?
Higher co-pays.
So that's the rationale for not going up on?
That would, yeah, there's, I think the value of the cut was 4%.
There's kind of 1, 2, 3 things. One is that we also need to stay competitive. If we're going to, for many of these positions, the best replacement is somebody who comes from within. But if they don't come within, we need to go to the outside. And if we're not competitive, somebody who works in another town or municipality is not going to move over to us. We already have a difference in pension, and that pretty much all these positions in other towns qualify for pension. In our town, they no longer would. We wouldn't be adding anyone new to the pension. Insurance is already a higher cost to department heads than if they work for another town. Because other towns don't have it at 18%. So if you look at these positions, if we're going to try and hire somebody from another town, it puts us in a very uncompetitive situation if we don't have as good a retirement program and we don't have as good a benefit program, or a more expensive benefit program.
I thought the general move was to go to 401As throughout. Are you saying that other towns did not take their department heads into 401As, that they kept their rank and file? They put their rank and file in 401As and the DHs stayed union? Stayed in the defined benefit?
Yeah. Absolutely. So when we're go out recruiting at the department head level, if you're recruiting somebody, forgive me, off the street who's been working in the private sector, they don't have a pension coming in here, we're very competitive with that. If you're recruiting somebody from another town or municipality, and that's where you're going to get experienced department heads from, they are on a pension with somebody else. So why would they leave a town with a pension to come here?
Okay, all right, I see what you're saying there.
Right? They also are on an insurance program that doesn't cost as much as this.
I got you. I see where you're going. I see it.
Right? So what I'm worried about is if we're going to continue to provide top quality services.
You're saying if we're hiring somebody who they're probably already in a pension plan.
Correct.
We're not going to pull them out of that because there's like, what am I gaining?
If you look at these functions, if you don't have somebody from within, all right, and somebody from within is already in the pension program, so you're not going to save anything there. If you go outside, you're looking at potentially IT. You'd go outside municipalities to get somebody. You'd look at potentially, but if you're looking at public works or conservation or health, those kind of positions, you're getting somebody from another town or municipality.
Bob, can I quantify what happened with PETA and what it's costing them? I mean, I do see, to Chris's point several hours ago, we had the employee contributions towards pension have gone up. I think I saw it go from like 1.5 to 1.8. So yes, there's more money being paid. I get it. I see it there. Am I seeing it in Aon? I wouldn't see it. How would I be able to see it? Is it in their contract? Did somebody do a,
Yeah, I can just get something from Aon that says the difference in the value of the plan.
yeah, I want to see,
Plan.
I want to stay competitive. But I saw,
Well, specifically, we're already not competitive, just to be clear on that, because we're.
but also
already
too, I
missing
remember
two people.
PETA went up. I saw if I'm not mistaken, they went from like 11, 12, 13, 14. And I could have sworn I saw their contribution go up. So I just want to see if the rank and file are feeling
PETA's only at 15%.
Yeah, but when
we're
we-
3% higher than PETA.
15?
Yeah, they're
But
at
when
15.
we settled that contract, I think it went from 13 to 14 to 15,
Right, they're currently,
or into the year. So
right. But, and at the same time, the plan got less rich.
all right, if you could quantify that for me,
Pretty sure.
just on PETA, so I can see, more along the lines, I'm trying to establish some sort of equity between the people in charge of the department and the people that work in the department. Not,
Well,
if the employees are getting whacked, I want to see the department head share in some of that.
Well, I'd be happy to drop my
Already,
contribution.
department
to
heads are already
15.
over that.
They make more.
They don't get overtime, they don't get comp days,
True.
all right? And a number of the long-term, when you add it all up and look at the comps, the difference in what the pressure we put on our department heads and what we expect out of department heads, the level of responsibility is much higher than the difference in pay in certain areas. But for me, the key is, if we're going to continue to get good people, if we've got somebody in-house, we're going to promote them and we don't have to deal with what this is. If they're not in-house, we're now competing with the market. And if we're going to continue to get top-quality people coming in, that's what drives our top-quality services. That's what lets us deliver. That's what lets us deliver on overall budget decrease, 2% budget increases over the last 5 years, because we've got department heads can make that work.
Did you have something, Linda, or no?
PETA's at 16%, effective 2021, I guess.
What percentage?
2020. 16, effective, in 2020, they'll be at 16.
That's 2 years from now.
What do we want to do about first selectmen and selectmen?
If you're amenable, what we did last time was to ask 2 members of the RTM of different parties, 2 members of the Board of Finance of different parties, to get together and recommend something to us.
I have no problem with that. Do we need to And when would that be effective? December?
No, it's effective late November or early December.
Basically
It's
after the election.
Yeah, oh, yes.
So
It's after the
then, how
election.
do you want to accrue?
We'll just take it out of the 300 normal contingency. It's a
That's
small,
the way we're going to handle it.
it's a small amount of money. And it's only 6 months, if you will, amount of money.
Okay, so we're not worried about budgetary impact on that.
I'm okay with that idea. How many contracts are we negotiating this year on the town side?
Just ECC?
Just ECC.
ECC is the only one that expires June 30, 20.
So-
18.
And I'm looking at, and I'm saying this because we give a stipend to the HR director to handle that. Is that stipend overpaying for one contract?
It overpays for one, probably, but underpays when there's more than one. It averages out.
There are several contracts that will end June 30 of '20, and the negotiations actually start the prior year. We don't wait till the contract has expired before we start negotiating, so you'll actually be in progress on some contracts.
I would also point out, it's not just contract negotiations, it's any labor issue that comes up during the year. You know how grievances come up from time to time, and it lets us handle those in-house as opposed to having to bring in an outside attorney to handle a labor grievance.
Yeah, I don't know how easy it'd be to document it, but we're saving a lot of money with him.
Okay.
Can I, one thing, just a process question. I found the budget with text extremely helpful, as usual. It answered pretty much any question that we get year over year. Going forward to get with this, I feel this is a compressed timeline for me.
Very much so.
Okay, it's not, yeah. To smooth this out, if I went through the big ticket budget items to get ready for today, what I'm thinking is I'm also going to be looking at the budget more for other things. How do you want me to handle that going Monday? Do you want me to send, if I have a question like, what happened to this, shoot it to the department head, respond and get it to us? How do you want to handle that?
CC me.
Okay, no, but
Well,
is that a
actually-
public question? What do I do?
I think the issue is, between now and Monday, actually, send me a copy. I'll get it to the appropriate department head, and I'll make sure the answer gets back to all three of us.
Okay,
As long as the answer comes back to all three of us, we're okay.
okay, that's all I'm saying. If just something comes up, I want to get to next Wednesday, and I want to get there as painlessly as possible. If there's something small.
And where I'm coming from, Ed, if you send it to me, then I can make sure it gets, I don't want it to get lost,
All right.
right? If I send it out, I can make sure that you get an answer back, or we get an answer back at the appropriate time.
Can I ask a question now to look into?
Sure.
I remember reading in something you sent out about more marketing going to economic development, and I'd like a little detail of what that marketing is.
Oh, we put more money in the budget for marketing in town, about $30,000. And the idea is to either use that on Fairfield or to use that as part of the fund to help participate in Fairfield 5 events.
The Fairfield 5 group, okay.
Go through with that. We don't have a detailed market, I mean, this is potentially 6 to 18 months out. We don't have the detailed plans, but we did want to put some money there to make sure that we have a fund to do something.
Yeah, the Fairfield,
Also apply for matching funds from the state. There's a bill up there. I'm not optimistic it'll get through, but at least the committee we presented to was optimistic and seemed to be very positive about it. Given everything at the state, we're asking for a small amount of money, maybe $150,000 matching dollars, and we'd have to match them so that we'd make sure that, but we'd use that fund to do a pilot marketing programs to basically help our Fairfield County marketing efforts in New York and Westchester counties.
so that answered my question. We're directing it towards Fairfield 5. If that doesn't pan out, we're going to put it towards marketing
We're going
Fairfield
to spend the
over.
money on marketing on Fairfield.
Yep,
If Fairfield 5 has appropriate programs, we'll support those. If it doesn't, we're spending it.
I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Anything else at this point?
I don't think so. I think we're just shooting for Monday morning, 9 a.m.
Yes.
And what's that? Public executive session?
That's us talking, no public,
Deliberations, how
no
we
public
feel?
comment. Yep. And any follow, if you know ahead of time that you want some department heads in for that, please let me know, because we'll get.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
And then we vote at a session Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Okay. Gentlemen, thank you. We're done.
Motion to adjourn or not adjourn?
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So, for
Second? All right. All in favor? Aye.